I'm Meredith Schwartz. I'm with the Fiscal Office as a Purchasing Director for DOA. We'll get started right here in a few minutes. Just some housekeeping things. If you guys need the restrooms, they're right here. Men's is here, women's is over there. Enjoy your lunch. Those that are on the line, use the chat window for any questions as we go through this presentation. I've got our communications director, Julia, with us that will stop me in between the slides, and we can answer any questions that we see in the chat window. You guys here can scream at me, yell at me, jump up and down, and I can answer those questions as we go along. Are we 12 o'clock? Oh.
Right at 12.
All right. So like I said, my name is Meredith Schwartz. I'm the purchasing director at DOA. I'm sure most of you know who I am. Thank you for joining us today. We are breaking down our large purchasing course that was an all-day course and doing these lunch and learns so that you have accessibility to small amounts of information. You're able to review all of our policies and our procedures and know what those are and be able to reference them. We will be recording today. And then at the end, the communications department will help me post this to our website as well as the DOA site. So it's accessible for you to be able to reference our policies. We're going to go over not only purchasing policies today, but fiscal policy. I do have our CFO, Brian Brandon, in here with me today to help me, and our budget manager, Prentice Hunt, to answer any of those accounting questions, those budget questions that I can't answer. All of these policies, this is just a refresher of all of our policies. We haven't had really any new changes. We have had some new system things that we've implemented, but everything as far as policy is concerned, this is all just a refresher for those guys to attend. Like I said, use the chat if you have any questions, and we're happy to answer those, but this is a very high-level overview of those policies as we go through them. All right. So the first thing I want to talk about is some mandated resources we have. So when you decide that something's broken, you need to buy something, whatever it is, we do have some mandated resources as a state agency that we must first consider. So first is our mandatory state term contracts. We have those through PNC and DIT. Anything that touches data, we consider DIT. So if you're buying software, hardware, IT, support services, or even subscriptions, anything like that, that actually you are either giving the vendor state data, or they have access to state data, or they're sending you data. We want to know where that data is stored and all of that. So that's what we consider an IT purchase. But we have mandatory state term contracts for both PNC, which is standard goods and services, as well as DIT procurement. There are convenience contracts as well for both DIT and PNC, and all of those are listed on their websites. If you have any problems of what is on a state term contract, feel free to reach out to our office. But we do have mandated state term contracts that we have to buy from out there. We'll get more into what those contracts are. We also have Correction Enterprises, which is a division of the Adult Corrections Department. Correction Enterprises supplies all of our office chairs, office equipment, or office furniture. It also supplies all of our printing needs. There are certain things that Correction Enterprises offers to us as a department. You must reach out and see if they're out there. You can check their website, which I've listed here on this slide, and see what's out there. We as actual state employees, you can benefit personally from Correction Enterprises as well. Know that they have prescription eyewear off of Yonkers Road. There is a warehouse, and if you take your prescription, they have a whole eyewear clinic that you can sign up for and get those cheap glasses. So know that that's out there for your benefit. They have things where they make fire pits and all kinds of framing. Anytime that you're doing framing for awards and all of that, go to Correction Enterprises. Yes.
Upholstery. They also do upholstery.
They also do upholstery. They do all kinds of things like that. State and federal surplus property is one of our divisions at DOA. We are mandated anytime that we are replacing equipment, any kind of consumables, we need to check with state surplus and see if they want to resell it. So anytime that you're going to replace a piece of equipment, just know to reach out to state surplus and see if they want to resell it. Also, as state agencies, we can go to state surplus if you have a small budget. Maybe you need office supplies or office equipment. Go out to state federal surplus and see what they have. They also hold auctions where they sell off their vehicles, and they sell off all kinds of things. So check out state surplus property, even for an individual base. It's out there. Mail Service Center is another division of DOA. They do all of our mass mailings. So if your department is doing any kind of mailing, just know that we got to check with Mail Service Center first before we go out to the vendor community to do those mailings. We get a price break on postage through the Mail Service Center. So check with Jorham's group and they can give you what it will cost your division to mail anything. We have state surplus or state property office. State property not manages all of our owned property, but they also manage all of our leased property. So I know several of our advocacy groups, including Indian Affairs and Council for Women, you have satellite offices. When you're doing your leases, all of that goes through the state property office. So if you have any questions on your leases, go to the state property office. When you go to pay for that lease, make sure you attach your lease to your requisition so it comes to Fiscal for payment of that lease. If you're ever trying to do anything else, including like consultant service or whatnot, know that you can utilize the other departments within the state, including our universities, our community colleges, and check with those. And we can write MOUs between your division and that other governmental agency, however that works. So if you're ever doing a contract between your division and your state agency, know that it needs to be looked at and approved by DOA Legal, so Danya and her group, there to review those MOUs. They're authorized under a waiver of competition, which is an administrative code, and it's item number 18, which is between two government agencies writing that contract. Once you have that MOU signed, know that you can't sign anything unless you have signature authority, but once it's signed and executed by both parties, just make sure you send us a copy of that MOU. Fiscal keeps a copy of all of those to ensure that we're paying the right people and doing the right thing. So we talked a little bit about those mandatory state term contracts. Make sure that you know that any printing services has to go to Correction Enterprise. That is a mandatory state term contract with Correction Enterprise. We have to give them first crack. Their printing services are very limited. So if you're trying to do booklets or things like that, they might not be able to do it. They will let you know, send you an email and say, no, we can't perform that. Now you can go out to open market. For furniture purchases, it's really a 4-step process. You first need to check with Correction Enterprises. From there, if they can't provide what you need, there is a state term contract 420A that is mandatory for all state agencies. It has to buy all kinds of furniture, including couches and bookcases and everything that you could think of, beds, mattresses, all of that is on that state term contract. And if there is for some reason you can't buy it there, you could check with the office supplies, which is no longer 615A. I'm not sure of the number, but it's with FSI. We all know the FSI contract. If for some reason none of that meets your needs, that's when then you can go out to open market, get quotes, do a bid, as if none of those mandatory things meet your needs. With DIT state term contracts, printers and copiers cannot be bought with your P card or through anything else besides state term contract 204D, which is an IT state term contract. So make sure if you're buying printers, don't buy it off the office supplies. It's always has been and will always be bought off a state term contract 204D. If you have some weird type of printer, you can always write a justification for that waiver, like Brandon's group does our ID badges, and that kind of printer is not on that contract. So we justify that there is no ID printer on the state term contract. So if you ever have something weird, that's when we get into a waiver thing, and y'all just have to justify why you're not buying off those mandatory state term contracts. And just know that no state term contract, except for paint and Lowe's, can be used with a P card. And we'll get into a little bit of P cards. If you haven't already, there was a lunch and learn on all the P card stuff. that is posted on our website, on the DOA website. And if you have any questions about where to find all that information, let us know and we can point you in the right direction. All right, so we talked a little bit about those MOUs. Just know that grant agreements, that any agreement with a vendor to use the grant must follow regular purchasing procedures unless the vendor is specifically named in the grant. So if John Deere set up to buy this grant to buy lawnmowers for the art museum, and they said, but you have to buy John Deere lawnmowers, then it's named in the grant. If it is not like that and that vendor is not named in the grant, it follows regular purchasing procedures just like anything else. When you're not using any type of standard PNC or DIT templates for contracts, just know that it has to go through our signature authority and the vendor has to sign it before we sign anything. Know that over 25,000 in our signature authority requires the secretary's signature, and that's for MOUs, grants, BDAs, and we'll get into what signature authority is. But that is where that takes effect. If it's on our standard and it's gone through regular procurement, then we have a different signature authority for standard procurements.
We have a question.
Yeah.
I think this was related to the previous slide, but the question was, what about a wireless keyboard or small items like that? So it's not a printer, it's not a copier.
Right. So there's peripherals, and if it's not on that, then office supplies.
Okay.
Yeah. So check out DIT. So both PNC and DIT have a list of all of their contracts and what's included in it. So if you go out, and you can always reach out to one of us in purchasing and we can point you in the right direction. But if you literally Google DOA purchasing contract, there's all your state term contracts. Each one of those contracts then has more information into about that contract. It even includes who manages that contract. So you can reach out to that person directly at PNC and say, hey, I don't understand, or I'm looking for whatever. Is this inside or outside that state term contract? So MOUs, as we talked about, that is an agreement between two governmental entities, two state entities, whether it be between us and a university. It could be between Indian Affairs and DOT. It could be between, I think there's several of those types of MOUs. The MOUs is the contract that includes deliverables. So it needs to include what happens under this contract, what are the deliverables under this contract, and how much money we are giving that other entity. Exchange of funds. Even if there is no exchange of funds, you still need to write a contract so that you are getting what you're supposed to get in those MOUs. Like I said, DOA legal drafts those agreements, those MOUs, and you just have to work with Donya's team to send them the scope of work and those deliverables. She'll draft the rest and make sure that it has all the correct terms and conditions to then get it out to the group. Again, same, that follows regular signature authority on who can sign those MOUs. If it's over that 25,000, it will require the secretary's signature. Payment for MOUs can go through e-procurement. There are several other state agencies that are listed as vendors in e-procurement, but it doesn't have to. If it's on an MOU, it can be paid direct because you're paying another state agency. All right, so if we've gone through all those mandated resources and none of those meet your needs because they either don't exist or they don't meet your needs, and you are now going out to open market to the vendor community to buy things, you all should have access on our website. We have a quick guide that says, I'm trying to spend this much money. This is what is needed from me. This is the approvals it goes through, and that's how it works. This is a breakdown of that. So if you have a P card, not everybody has a P card, but if you do, and it's not on one of those mandatory things, so it's not on state term contract, and it is approved kind of purchase with a P card, because you can't buy fuel and you can't buy meals and you can't buy some other things that we all should know if you get a P card, what the do's and don'ts are. But if it doesn't meet one of those needs and you're going out for open market, if it's under $1,000, you can use your P card. If it's under $29,000, our policy says that you can get one quote as long as that one quote is from a hub vendor. and that's to increase our hub spend and work with our hub communities. So that one quote, if it's under $29,000, it's open market purchase. If you have that one quote from a hub vendor, we issue a PO and get it done. If you can't find a hub vendor, reach out to our hub liaison, who is Markina Atkins. She can help you find a hub vendor. If for some reason there is not a hub vendor in that space, we then are requiring 3 quotes. We go with the lowest quote. That's all under $29,000. The minute we get over that benchmark of small purchase of $29,000 up to $50,000 is where we are in informal competition. We require 3 quotes, and we also require the vendor to sign our terms and conditions. So that's when we start getting into those documents that y'all work with our group at purchasing to make sure we're getting that vendor to sign those terms and conditions. When it gets over 50 grand, that's when we go out for bid. Goes out on to EVP, out for the world to see, out for vendors to bid. We go through the whole formal bid process using either an IFB, which is a invitation for bid, or an RFP, which is a request for proposals. IT purchases are a little bit different. Anything under 5 grand, you get a quote. We issue a PO for it. Anything from 5 to 25,000 is small purchase for IT purchases, requires 3 quotes. We go with the lowest. If it's over 25,000, that's our general delegation. For IT purchases, that's formal bid, goes to DIT through those approvals. Know that IT has security reviews. Joey's group looks at it, as well as statewide IT procurement. We could potentially be asking vendors for vendor with where that data is being stored to look at those security reviews. This quick guide is out on DOA's website, out on Fiscal Management's internal website, that, like I said, is a chart that breaks this down real easy. This is how much money I'm spending. This is what I'm trying to buy. This is what happens to it. This is who approves it. So be on the lookout for that. Everything's weird in procurement. Always something's up. There's always some kind of thing that could potentially be a proprietary service, a proprietary equipment, sole source purchase, brand specific. It could be an emergency. We know that we have a lot of these old buildings that are falling apart and constantly needing repairs. So those are usually emergencies. Anything that you have where I already have this piece and I need this piece to fit into it is a standardization waiver. Or it could be that the vendor's already done some of this and now we need to continue this. That's considered an ongoing job or task. So waivers can be approved. Just know it's on the division to justify that waiver. There is an entire list of what is an approved waiver under the administrative code. We have a quick list of what those are. But just know if it's a sole source, you also have to get a letter from the vendor that says they're the only ones that provide it. So we do have waivers of competition. Just know it's on the division to justify that waiver. And you can include that waiver into your comments if it's a small purchase on your requisition. So P cards, like I said, there was a whole P card lunch and learn. This is very high level on our P card stuff, but that lunch and learn got into the weeds of the P cards. If you have any questions on P cards, know that Sandra Bryant out of my office is our P card administrator. She is the know-all of P cards. So feel free to reach out to her with any of your questions. Know that P cards are for official uses only, and our DOA policy limit is $1,000. So if you have anything that you're buying that's open market under $1,000, you can use that P card as long as you don't have one of those mandated resources. There are limits within the system when you're ordering a P card. When you're getting your P card, your division can decide what those are in the system, but policy limit is $1,000. If your purchase is for a service and the supplier is not incorporated, know that the purchase must go through e-procurement to capture the payment, because we have to get that 1099 for reporting purposes. We have e-forms for P cards. So we have a request for a new card. We have a maintenance request in case your name changes, in case those limits need to change in the system. If anything changes with your P card, that's what that maintenance form is for. And then we have the exception request. So the exception request is one time I need to buy something that is either over that limit or outside the policy. So let's say you have a P card and you can't find what you need on those mandatory state term contracts. You can submit an exception request. You are then justifying this is why it's not on that mandatory state term contract. It's documenting all of that, keeping it in one place for compliance purposes. It goes through the approval flow and we say, yes, you can then use that P card to make that exception. It's a one-time thing. If it's something where we have to go into the system and raise your limits so that you're not standing at the store and your P card doesn't work, give us a little bit of time for that. We will let you know what the window is for you to make that purchase before your limits go back down to what they are within the system. And those request forms are all on the Fiscal intranet. Also included on the Fiscal intranet when you got a P card was the policy manual that goes over how to use a P card, when to submit your receipts, all of that information about a P card. It includes that do's and don'ts list. Make sure you know that, you sign that you do know that, know what you cannot put on a do's and don'ts list. You can't, mainly fuel, meals for travel, and then no state term contract items. Tax. All P card purchases are tax exempt. We do have a tax exempt form that you can give a vendor if you need to, but all purchases within state procurement are tax exempt. We do not pay sales tax. P card reconciliation forms and receipts have to be sent to Fiscal within 3 days of purchase for them to reconcile in the work system. You can submit those to the pcard@doa.nc.gov. All right, so getting into the BDA. So the BDA is a budget authorization form, and that's used for authorizing the funds and ensuring that you have the budget to cover any expenses that fall outside of your regular procurement process. So this is where our folks at Fiscal get involved, is with those BDAs. You can use, that is not the payment mechanism. It is strictly approving you for that expenditure. There is an e-form on DOA's management's intranet site, and the following are some of the activities that would require a BDA. Of course, it's not limited to these things, but these are what they mostly are used for. So any travel expenses, including hotels, airfare, rental car, meals, things like that. Conferences, webinars, trade show, workshop, training, registration fees, hosting expenses for meetings, conferences, or seminars, membership fees, moving expenses, things like that all need to be put on a BDA. It is not a purchasing or a payment mechanism, but there are radial buttons. So if you are using it to buy airfare, you can stipulate on that BDA, I plan to use my P card to pay for this approved airfare once this BDA is approved. Or I plan to get reimbursed, or I plan to put in a requisition, or it's going to be direct payment. Anything that's over $1,000 that you are putting, that you plan to use a P card for that BDA, no, you're also going to have to put in an exception to use that P card for over $1,000.
2 weeks.
And allow 2 weeks for processing, according to Brian. All right, so we're talking about travel. Know that we utilize the OSBM regulates how the travel rules and for all of our state agencies, including DOA. You can refer to the OSBM Budget Manual Section 5 for the most up-to-date travel policy. So the link, you can just simply search for Budget Manual and OSBM. The BDA needs to be submitted at least 10 days prior to the event or the travel or whatever expense you plan to incur. The P card can be used for hotel, airfare, or transportation, but not for meals or fuel while you are traveling. You have to get reimbursed for meals and fuel. Reimbursement could include mileage, per diem meals, tolls, gas for vehicle, or gas for rental car. Employee must submit the travel reimbursement form within 30 days after the expense is incurred and use the updated form that's on Fiscal's website. Business-related daily trips, reoccurring or one time, that does not require a BDA. So you can just submit the reimbursement form for if it's a daily trip. Do you have anything else on any of that?
Probably that previous slide.
Got to speak up so they can hear you.
That employee reimbursement, 30 days, that is actually a state cash management plan. So this, coming from the state treasurer, it's not our rule, the 30 days. So technically, if you don't get your reimbursement within 30 days, we can deny reimbursement.
So for those that are calling in, Brian said the 30-day window for reimbursement is based on the state cash management with the treasurer's office. And so after that 30 days, it could be denied if it has gone past that 30 days, because that's policy for the treasury's office. Okay. All right, so when we talk about transportation services, we now have Uber and Lyft and things like that. If you are going within the state, know that if you are planning on renting a car, we have a mandatory state term contract with Enterprise for car rental. However, if you are flying to somewhere, they're not going to know about our state term contract. So you can use your P card to rent a car as long as you are flying somewhere to get there. But if it's in state, utilize the state term contract. The budget authorization form has to be approved for any overnight travel and include the rental cars and estimated mileage while you're there. Those ride shares for Lyft, Uber, or taxi for travel within the state is not allowed. However, ride share is allowed if you are flying outside of North Carolina to your destination. You can be reimbursed for Uber, Lyft, that type of thing, taxis for the ride share stuff. So direct pays are used solely to pay for utilities or if we are paying another agency. So if it could not be purchased for some reason through e-procurement, that there can be reasons to use direct pays, but usually on the norm, it is used for things like utility bills, memberships, things like that, that cannot be purchased out on the open market using e-procurement. Just make sure you consult your manager before using this type of purchase. Invoices are still submitted through the invoicing approval flow, and the division directors are included in the approvals of that electronic form that's out there. We monitor those direct pays to make sure for compliance, because that's part of our purchasing compliance report that comes out of PNC compliance reviews. So direct pay should only be used when paying something that is a utility bill, a membership, or you're paying another governmental agency direct. And it's then associated to that MOU or that grant or whatever it is for that. So we've got two different types of signature authority we're going to talk about. First, we're going to talk about contract signature authority. These are things that have come through my office at purchasing where we are using standard PNC templates, standard DIT templates. It's gone through that purchasing approval flows, through the purchasing administrative code. So anything that's under $100,000, I can sign as the purchasing officer to execute that contract. Anything from 100,000 to 300,000, I would reach out to the division director and have them execute the contract. If it goes over 300 up to $1 million, our deputy secretaries approve those, or not approve them, but sign them and execute them. And if it's over $1 million for the annual cost of a contract, then the secretary would sign it. So that's for contracts that have gone through standard procurement and are on the approved PNC and DIT templates. If we're outside of that for things like direct invoices, state surplus forms, contracts and grants for grants, and then MOUs, MOAs, and BDAs, this is our standard signature authority. So if it's $5,000 or less, your division director will sign it. If it's $5,000 to $25,000, the deputy and Brian, the chief financial officer, will have to sign it. But if it goes over $25,000, the secretary will have to sign it. We do keep up with who has signature authority. So just mainly, if you do not have signature authority, do not sign anything. Do not sign anything. If you don't know if you have signature authority, ask somebody before you sign anything. When you sign things, there are always hidden terms and conditions and things we don't know about, and you could be signing the state to things that we should never have signed for. So if you don't know if you can sign it, it's better off ask and don't sign it. If some vendor's pressuring you into signing something that has to be signed, just make sure you're asking us. We never sign a vendor's quote that comes in. When we get those through e-procurement, it could look like a subscription license or things like that. We're strictly using it as a quote. We're not executing it for small purchasing because we're not agreeing to some other vendor's terms and conditions. Even those things that don't have dollar value, including those MOUs that you could be writing between two government entities, know that it still has to be signed, even if there's no funds changing values, changing hands. MOUs and MOAs are always drafted and reviewed by legal counsel at DOA before those signatures happen. If you've already signed it, it's already done. There's not much we can do about it. But know that you have to let Donya's group review those MOUs and MOAs. It needs to include a scope of services, deliverables, the term, how long that contract will be active, and then any values attached to it. Agreements that don't require the expenditure of funds still need approval before anybody signs anything. So just make sure you know who needs to sign stuff. Don't willy-nilly sign things. And always we have an open door at Fiscal, and especially in purchasing. We are there to answer your questions. Feel free to call us at any times. If you have things that have to deal with contracting, you can ask myself or Sandra or Lisa. If it's small purchase, you can reach out to Gary, or any of the state term contract stuff, you can reach out to Gary Clayton. And then Martina Atkins is our hub liaison. So if you have any questions about finding hub vendors or whatnot, you can reach out to Martina. She also is now managing our e-procurement access. So if you need access to e-procurement, reach out to Martina. There is also a form for e-procurement access out on our Fiscal site that she can help you with and make sure that your approval flows are correct in e-procurement. So do we have any questions in the chat? Go ahead and put them in. Does y'all have any questions here? Yes, ma'am. Yes, so I will, like I said, this is a recorded session. So we will have the recorded session as well as these slides up, and after Comms looks through them, make sure that I didn't put anything weird in. Yeah. You got anybody there?
Any other questions? Keep on asking if there's any questions.
Yeah, if there's any questions in the chat, or somebody can take themselves off mute and raise their hand. I can't see that.
Oh, okay, Melinda has one.
Melinda.
Yes.
So Melinda, if you want to take yourself off mute. You hear her?
Should have. I enabled her to tell her I enabled her to.
So you're enabled, and you should be able to
take
yourself off mute.
Thank you. I have it now. Are the recordings? I think I missed it. Are they on the intranet?
So right now, the P card recording is already out on Fiscal's intranet under the purchasing slide tab, and they're also out on DOA's main website as well.
They're in LMS too.
Yes, and we have them in LMS as well. So that's the P card one. We will get this one and those slides out there shortly once we have time to review. So they'll be out there for you to review as well.
Any other questions?
All right. So that concludes our session today. I think our next one will be on submitting requisitions through e-procurement. So we hope to have that one up in the next 2 months or so, to hold another lunch and learn, and we'll record each one of these to make them accessible to you. That's it. Thanks for joining.